Hi, I'm Shay, and today I'm going to be drawing and talking about a personal project of mine, my Y2k witch characters and their world, and a little comic that goes along with them. I've been hinting at this story for a while and have been mentioning it in previous videos, but today we're finally going to be doing a full deep dive into the characters and their world. And as always, thank you to my patrons for supporting this project and continuing to support the creation of videos like these. So the initial idea for this comic came from a drawing from Arttober 2023. I was exploring a lot of different ideas for that challenge, a bunch of one-off illustration stories and OC doodles, but there was one idea in particular that really stuck out to me. I was exploring this Y2k inspired Sona of myself with the story that I was a witch and that I had trapped my boyfriend Steven into a Tamagotchi so I could just carry him around in my pocket and take care of him. It was a super fun concept, and I was really getting back into Y2K aesthetics and reminiscing with my own dead LPS Tamagotchi, which I have somewhere in this room. Hold on. Yep, there she is. I'm pretty sure she just needs a new battery. I hope she can come back to life, but yeah, ancient relic from 2006 McDonald's. They don't make them like they used to. All right, getting back on track. I found myself really interested in this idea of Y2K technology that I had grown up with being fused with a sort of magical and fantasy element. Taking a lot of inspiration from like Dungeons and Dragons, just like your typical European fantasy setting. A couple months later, I started doodling this Y2K witch more, and she started to slowly evolve into an entirely new character, not just a Sona of mine. I don't know about you guys, but I think a lot of my character ideas start from imagining myself in an alternate universe or creating some sort of Sona that eventually just becomes a separate entity from myself. It makes sense because we as artists are inspired by the things around us and our own experiences, but I always feel like the characters that are like most naturally created are just facets of myself. Anyways, a couple more months pass and I actually start drafting out a little story idea and some mood boards and start exploring these characters and their worlds more. And pretty soon I have a somewhat solid concept for a little comic project. I started sketching the pages out in August and was working on it on and off between working on the channel, the Patreon, and sort of a painting mentorship that was going on as well. So progress was quite slow, but I feel like that allowed me more time to think about their story and the characters as I was creating the comic. I was kind of taking like this learning as I go approach. I know that in the future I definitely want to plan things out more, but for this just initial comic of mine, like my first comic, I kind of just wanted to jump in, and I wasn't trying to get like a super like figured out concept because this was my first time doing it. I more so wanted it to be like an exploration and space for me to figure out how I want to make comics, and using this story as kind of an example and as space to explore. And like I said before, this comic project has sort of been baby steps into getting back into comics and more character focused work. I keep on thinking about this project as sort of a pilot of sorts, or dress rehearsal for more finished projects down the road. So nothing is really set in stone, and there isn't like a strict canon yet for their story. It's kind of like a warm-up. It's not taking things too seriously, just enjoying the process and having fun with these characters and just learning as much as possible. So our two characters are Fiona, the main character, and her boyfriend Paolo, and they live in sort of a modern fantasy world that is similar to kind of like the film Onward, or if you watch Fantasy High from Dimension 20. So there are fantasy races and concepts similar to the outlines of Dungeons and Dragons. It's kind of very loose world building right now, and a lot for me to figure out magic system wise and societal structure wise, but we'll get there. They have technology similar to ours alongside a magic system, which is what our main character Fiona is really interested in. The combination of both electronic-based technology and magic working together, which is one of the main topics researchers of her world are working on, trying to define the limits for, which causes some issues for her later in the story. Fiona and Paolo are fresh out of college and moving in together at the beginning of their story. Fiona basically works at a fantasy version version of Best Buy as a computer specialist, but spends a lot of her free time honing her magic and experimenting with old and new technology to innovate the way magic users manipulate electronics in conjunction with their power. So a lot of these ideas stem from a curiosity of mine growing up while reading Harry Potter. I always wondered how Hogwarts students would use magic in like contemporary times, like with iPhones and like laptops, like how that would intersect. So a lot of these ideas come from that. And it also stems from an idea of the limits of human power and how we kind of extend our power through technology, if that makes sense. It's sort of like how AI is like a huge thing now, and how AI is being used as a tool to accelerate a lot of things. And yeah, I guess it just, a lot of these ideas come from like things that are actively happening right now and things I've always wondered about in my life. And in Fiona's story, casters, as in magic users, have always been limited by their own energy and physical bodies. But what if you could create sort of an external battery of sorts for wizards to perform larger feats of magic for extended periods of time? This could potentially allow more people to be healed and helped, whether it be natural disaster, natural disease, and overall improve the quality of life for everyone. But obviously there are great dangers to innovation as well, and I think that's also inspired by the show Arcane and Jason Victor's continual like progression with hex tech. I feel like that also has inspired me a lot with this storyline. So Fiona's visual design is mainly inspired by a multitude of Y2k era movies of insert blonde female lead characters like Elle Woods from Legally Blonde, Regina George from Mean Girls, Lizzie McGuire, and Cher from Clueless. This exploration of magic and technology are driven by her own curiosity and want to improve the community around her, but she's also a total nerd and finds a lot of enjoyment and amusement with tinkering with tech, and gets a lot of creative fulfillment with building new spells and creations with magic. I think she would definitely be classified more as a sorceress with innate magical abilities than a typical wizard having to learn magic from studying. However, she still struggles with developing her skills due to an event in her past barring her from pursuing higher education in magic. So I think that'll be explored a little bit later in her story, but she has restricted access to certain magical resources. So moving on to our other character in the story, Paolo, or PJ. PJ is attending grad school at a nearby university, studying literature, and is also a part-time pet shop associate, taking care of magical and non-magical creatures and finding them new homes when he isn't attending class. One of my favorite bands that were popular in the early 2000s was Deftones, so I really wanted his likeness to be heavily inspired by the lead singer Chino. I feel like his hair and his facial hair was kind of like peak late 90s, early 2000s fashion styles of new metal music communities, and I really like to think that he wanted frosted tips, but Fiona drew the line there and said no. Paolo also has a bit of a creative spark and really wants to become a writer, focusing on poetry and maybe even some songwriting. I really haven't like fleshed that out too much. Like I said at the beginning of this video, there's a lot that still needs to be explored and fleshed out with them. He's continuing his education to practice more, but he finds himself hesitant to share his work with his peers and push himself to get out there. I feel like based on my own experiences, both of these characters are kind of in that sort of gray period after graduating school and trying to just figure themselves out. If you really like these characters and their world, then I'm happy to share that you can see more art of them and my other character projects over on my Patreon. We have a monthly sticker club, and February's sticker of the month is a rosy little illustration of these two knight characters. Steven put them in my hand. Very cute. So if you sign up anytime during the month of February, you will get this sticker in the mail along with the benefits of patron-only live streams, art updates, a super fun Discord server of over 200 amazing artists of all kinds, a sketchbook club with new prompts every month, and overall help me to keep on making art and videos like this. We currently have two tiers, the $2 cookie jar tier that gives you access to everything except the monthly sticker, and then the $7 sticker club tier with all the same benefits with the monthly sticker included, that is open to both US and international members. We still have slots open at the time of filming for both of them, but They are limited, so make sure to check it out. And if you're just interested in the monthly sketchbook club prompts, then you can sign up as a free member and receive a new prompt every month to keep your inspiration going. I couldn't continue to make videos, spend more time on my art, and develop these larger projects without the support of my patrons and viewers like you. So thank you all so much for watching my videos and engaging with my work on social media and the monetary support. Thank you all so much again. Okay, back to the video. So I feel like a lot about these characters have stemmed from my own experiences so far being official working adult TM these past 2 years. It feels like such a short time and such a long time at the same time, and I'm sure a bunch of you guys can relate. So much has happened. After graduating, I moved back in with my family. I started posting reels to Instagram, which eventually led to making videos for this YouTube channel, and so many videos. Oh my goodness. I started making stickers and selling them online. I started memberships on Ko-fi for a couple months and then ended it because I was growing so much and couldn't juggle YouTube, my memberships, and I worked with a bunch of different sponsors, and this whole art and YouTube thing became a full-time endeavor for me, and I moved to my own place with my partner, and I've been able to open back up my Patreon and pursue these more personal projects like the y2k witch, and plan for other stories like Blueberry Bill and Strawberry Saul, and potentially the Minotaur Night as well. And now my boyfriend Steven has been helping me with the channel and the Patreon so that I have more time for art and the comic work. While on the other hand, there has been the major introduction of AI image generation online, a bunch of negative platform changes to Instagram and even YouTube, and major industry changes and lack of jobs for my generation, inflation, on top of all that, all the political tension and crises in the world. So I think that this early 20s period is so volatile and ever-changing, especially a career in the arts. Or maybe the world in general is just like that, and I've just been discovering it now, I guess, after being sheltered by academia and idealism of the perfect career and the romanticization of being a young creative in the world. But anyways, all of that to say, these characters stem from this sort of awkward adjustment period after school where you're trying to figure out who you are, what you want to do, how to do it, and still be social and successful and financially responsible. But also thinking about going back to school, becoming more skilled so that you are valuable to employers. These characters are learning deeper forms of responsibility and how to navigate relationships through everything that they're going through. Plus magic. It gets pretty complicated. I don't think it's necessarily yearning for when times are simpler. Maybe sometimes it is, but mostly just looking at the vast future ahead and wondering, what the heck are you gonna do? What should you focus on? I think that's kind of the ideas that I get and put into these characters, just with kind of a silly retro fantasy packaging. Now back to the actual story. Their story starts with Paolo and Fiona moving in together, boxes everywhere, a bit chaotic and a bit exciting. As PJ is working on breakfast, Fiona is getting a head start on unpacking. She rummages through a couple boxes and stumbles upon her old Tamagotchi from a couple years back. Instantly distracted by this nostalgic object, she drops everything and begins the process of bringing it back to life for some good old serotonin. Turning it on doesn't work. Stealing batteries from a bathroom scale doesn't work. She then starts to use magic and it just gets worse and worse. There's a specific part of this first exploration of the comic that I knew had to have a full splash illustration. The climax of this first part of the story where Fiona finally thinks she's gotten the spell right for reawakening her dead Gotchi by siphoning the energy from a houseplant, rest in peace Pothos, to redirect into the technology. As it begins to work and her creative magical fervor has hit a boiling point just below insanity, Paolo rushes in, worried that she's gonna hurt herself or the environment around her. They did just get the apartment after all, and he eventually wants that safety deposit back, but most of the concern is for Fiona. However, his interference causes him to be transferred into the Gotchi, not the plant, leaving Fiona with a broken plant pot, 2 plates of hash browns, no Paolo to be seen, but a very much awake Tamagotchi. So during the thumbnailing and sketching phases, I was aiming for a more dynamic pose and composition for this scene, something that would contrast the multiple comic panels before it and really stand out. I settled on this thumbnail of Fiona in the foreground, holding both the Tamagotchi and the houseplant in each of her hands, and Paolo trying to get her attention. I originally shared this illustration as a tutorial last year, so if you want to see the full step-by-step process of this painting, you can check out the video in the card above. But yeah, that's the general premise and direction of the beginning of their story. This event is the catalyst for how the rest of their story goes, and I can't wait to share more throughout this year about them. I'm definitely still a huge beginner when it comes to comics, and like I said before, this has kind of been like a test run, but I had a lot of fun writing and drawing this little section of their story. And since this is part of a larger comic project, I just want to talk a little bit more about my own experience with comics and how I've been getting back into creating them. It's been a bit of a rough start. My main issue has been style consistency and figuring out what I want it to look like through the process of working on the actual pages. And definitely moving forward for the next section, I want to set out like a more cohesive style guide and really make more in-depth character sheets of the characters so that things can become more consistent. As you saw in the speed paints in this video, I wanted the comic to look less line heavy by opting into a looser, softer pencil line as the line art, and that the future painting and rendering would do more of the heavy lifting. Honestly, I didn't really have a clear vision of how the style would be, which was not a great move for someone who hasn't made a comic in years, but I was writing the quote-unquote new art project high. But as I got a little more than halfway through, I really didn't like how it looked. It still had an unfinished quality, and adding more rendering on top would not be feasible for such a long-term comic project. So after being more than halfway done with coloring this first part, I started to actively go back and give it a more traditional American comic line art style with more solidity in my drawings that will make them appear more complete and confident. A good part about that was I already had a lot of the colors figured out and my pencil drawings were pretty clear, but why did I do this to myself? Even though I've struggled a little bit with finding style consistency and confidence with what I'm doing, it's just given me more time to explore with more doodles and sketches of them in my sketchbook, which sketchbook tour is eventually coming soon. It's been almost over a year since I've done a sketchbook tour, so that's definitely coming soon. But yeah, taking longer with this project and just daydreaming more about these characters and their world and how the rest of their story will go was actually a blessing in disguise. The pages are a bit all over the place stylistically, and the compositions aren't as fluid as I would want them, but I really enjoyed bringing this story to life with the skills that I have now. Enjoying the process is really important, and I hope as I figure out my comic style and voice and hopefully get a bit more efficient with my process, I will continue to share this journey with you either on this channel or on my Patreon. After a couple more slow weeks of progress, the comic was finally finished and posted to my Patreon a week and a half ago, I think, by the time this posted. And even though there is so much that I struggle with in this project and how slow it came along, I'm really proud to have finished it, and it gave me a lot of confidence moving forward to continue their stories and prep for other stories. Yeah, maybe Bill and Saul? Who knows? So you can see the fully colored pages on my Patreon for free right now. All you have to do is become a free member of my Patreon and you will have access to these pages and future updates regarding the comic and other future projects in my shop and a whole lot more. I do have future plans of making a comic website, but for now I'm just going to keep it simple and just post it to Patreon. I hope this video inspired you to finally tackle your own projects and stories of your characters. Don't wait until your skills are good enough or when you think your ideas are good enough. You're never gonna feel ready. You learn so much through the process of actually creating and writing. You figure out what you actually need, little details that you need to figure out. So don't sit for too long on your ideas. And that is a little bit about the silly goobers and their fun world of fantasy and Y2K aesthetics. This video has definitely been a long time in the making. It feels so nice for it to finally be published. I hope all of you enjoyed listening to me rant about my OCs for however long this video is. They're still early in their development and designs, and there's so much more I want to explore and finalize about them. So I'm excited to continue to share them on this channel and on Patreon. Special thanks as always to my patrons for supporting me and allowing me to put more time into projects like this. You guys truly make what I do possible. I have another fun video project series coming up, so if you like My Little Pony and Dungeons and Dragons, make sure to subscribe to the channel and stick around. I wish you all the best, happy drawing, and I'll see you in the next one.